Hey, what's up, guys? This is a new free YouTube tutorial covering a really cool new feature that's been requested for a really long time in Redshift. And it's a really powerful feature. I love Cryptomatte. It makes compositing tasks and generating mats a million times easier than the old way of doing things. And it started out as an Arnold plugin created at PsyOp and for Nuke, and a system that they generated to work with Arnold. It eventually kind of evolved, got picked up by the industry, and over the last few years, more and more applications and renderers started working with it. And so Redshift finally came around to adding this feature. And so I'm going to go over kind of just how it works in Redshift, how to set it up, the different modes that Redshift works with, and I'm not going to go over the installation process for Nuke. You guys could just, look that up on your own. There's plugins now for Nuke, for Fusion. It works even in the free version. I believe Blender has a plugin now, so in your compositing Blender system, you could use that there. Houdini's Cops compositing mode also loads it up. Other apps that have it is like Clarice. I think there's even a beta right now for After Effects support, and you can find all this stuff on the official PsyOp GitHub. So just type in on Google PsyOp Cryptomatte, and the GitHub will pop up, and you'll have some information, the different apps that the renders and stuff that support it. So you can see RenderMan's got it now, Blender, Arnold, Redshift right here. So this came out a couple versions ago for Redshift. Right now it's still only in Maya, but I'm going to say that in the next week or two it'll probably start appearing in the other applications. So I figured I would start making the tutorial now. The settings will basically be the same, I'm sure, across all the apps like usual, just UI differences. And so, yeah, there's the Nuke, Fusion, Houdini, Blender, Flame, and After Effects versions of the plugin that you can install for those apps to decode the data. And, it's all free. So just check out the GitHub, download the one you need for your compositing package. Hopefully someone makes one for Photoshop or something in the future. So yeah, what Cryptomatte is it basically generates special mat data into your EXRs. And so it's not like a puzzle mat or a clown pass, which has just colors. Because that introduces color contamination, which can give you fringe and issues when you're cutting out your mats. So what Cryptomatte does, it's actually a special data set. It's a lot more advanced than just an RGB based mat system. And so, but it's visualized RGB as like a puzzle mat with colors and stuff, just so you can see it. But that's not how it actually works. That's Cryptomatte's by far superior to any other mat system we have today, like the puzzle mat in Redshift, or in other apps they have clown passes. All that stuff is inferior in terms of the technology behind Cryptomatte that allows for cleaner mats. Obviously you're still going to run into fringe and issues, like anything, but it's in general it's a lot more powerful, easy to set up, and cleaner in your comp results. So here we've got our base scene. We've got this little car going. Oh, and as another update, the Redshift documentation's been getting updated. I actually worked on the Cryptomatte documentation, so this video is going to kind of accompany that documentation. It's being revamped, so if you guys have questions, check out the new documentation. There's a lot of stuff getting added all the time. So anyways, so we're going to load up the our scenes render settings. Here we go. And under AOVs, let's just delete the one we got right now. And so you'll have your AOV list like usual, and now we'll have this new Cryptomatte. So we just double click it, we've added it, let's select it, let's move that out of the way. And the AOV itself comes with a few options. And so there's the file name convention. You could just leave this at default if you don't have any network system or naming convention you need to use. The format, obviously EXR, and the ID type. This is the most important parameter. This basically tells you how the Cryptomatte's going to be assembled. And so there's node name, there's material name, there's Redshift object ID, and user attribute. So these options basically let you build any mat you need. And so the first two are automatic. These just work by whatever your node names, your transform or object node names are, and it just reads in the names, and every name that's unique, it assigns a mat to. The material names, same thing, except for materials, so anything that shares the same material, it'll create mats for them. Redshift object ID, this system works a lot like the puzzle mat technique, where every object ID, you assign object IDs and it reads in that data. It's basically a more advanced version of the puzzle mat, where instead of just having RGB, 3 options, you can just keep adding as many options as you want. So this is great for customizing individual things that you want cut out. And user attributes, similar, since Redshift object ID is a type of attribute, but a user attribute basically lets you customize the naming of the attribute and the objects assigned. And so this is probably the most advanced. Most people probably won't need something this advanced unless you're like in a studio situation or something, but I'll go over the basics of how this works. And so think of it kind of like a custom attribute. Same thing with user data nodes, something similar. And so just to get started, we'll use node name, the most basic, the one, the default that it starts with. The Cryptomatte depth, oh yeah, and this is blank right now because you need user attributes to be activated, so I'll go over that later. Cryptomatte depth, think of this as the depth of objects that can be layered on top of each other. So the reason is because you can like a single individual pixel in your render, if there's X amount of motion blurred objects and stuff like that, depth of field, how many objects back can it actually detect? 6 is a lot. I would say the defaults of 6 is more than enough. But if you notice that some of the mats are getting cut off because you have tons of objects and stuff, motion blurred and with depth of field, and so they're overlapping each other with transparencies, then you might want to increase this. For our situation, this is plenty. So cool. So we're gonna just bring up our scene, and there's been some updates to the Redshift render view. I'm not gonna go over them right now, but just so you guys know, there's a lot of development going on. So there's post effects now, like flares, streaks, all kinds of that pretty stuff that everybody loves from Octane and all those renders that have all that post effect stuff. This is all coming already, so there's all kinds of stuff in here. Photographic exposures, there's going to be curves added pretty soon. This is right now currently in a private build, so it's not in the public experimental builds just yet, but I would expect the post effect stuff to arrive relatively soon, so if anyone's wondering. Okay, so cool. If we fire up an IPR, we will not be able to preview the Cryptomatte because the Cryptomatte is generating a separate EXR file. So this actually needs to be a full actual render. And I got some weird bug right now. Okay, just had to restart I didn't want it to crash on us midway when it gave me that error, so it was one of those save and close and reopen just in case errors. So okay, cool. So like I was saying, the Cryptomatte will not appear in IPR mode because it's saving its own separate EXR data. So let's pause this. And if you're wondering why it might look a little different, I just disabled the post effects stuff mostly, just so we can just focus on the Cryptomatte. And so if we hit a full render, so let's move this out of the way. and it starts rendering, doing its thing. While it's rendering, I could cover kind of just the new post effect stuff is in OpenGL, so it's pretty neat. You could just activate it on, off, it just works. So that's pretty cool. A lot of different controls and sliders and stuff. So, okay, cool. We've got our render. And we've got our AOVs. So we've got these extra AOVs. These are for optics, because I'm running optics right now. So this is the noisy AOV. This is the cleaned up optics AOV. Works pretty good. So now we have this Cryptomatte AOV. So if we load that up, let's hit F. You'll notice these blue colors and stuff. And so each object, even though the blues might look similar, if you were to take this into like Nuke or something, each object right now has its unique mat. So if we zoom in here, you could see that the ground is separate from the wall, and these little rocks on the ground each have their own cutouts, their own mats. Automatically, it's all automatic. We didn't even have to, do anything. All we did was just activate a Cryptomatte. That's how awesome it is. It just works. And so, cool. Let's say we want to add more. Let's actually save. So we'll load up our render settings again. And what's neat is you can add more Cryptomattes. So we're gonna load up we're gonna make several. So we'll just call this one node name. So we know that this one's for the node name stuff. This next one, we're going to switch it to material name. And so we'll call this material name. And so all we did was just change the mode to material name mode. And so let's save that. And let's go back to beauty and let's just re-render. And so if we render the now we'll have 2 Cryptomattes being generated. So you can make as many Cryptomattes as you need. If you need 10, 20, 30, whatever, there's all the mats you would ever need, which makes it super convenient and super powerful. And so let's just preview what we've got. Here we've got our node name, which is the one we already created. Now we've got material name. So the materials, as you can see, the wall is a different material from the ground. The car body, if we go back to the beauty, the silver material is its own mat. The glass, the rims, the tire, this carbon material here, these are all their own separate materials based on your material assignments. Awesome. So now you could select your mats that way, or you could do it on an individual object basis. Okay, cool. So that right there already kind of, for most people, that already covers pretty much most of the mats you need, But let's say you need something unique. Like you need specifically a couple objects. So let's move out of the way. And let's make a third Cryptomatte. Let's load that up. And this time we'll use Redshift Object ID. So let's name this RS Object ID. And so how this works is basically the same way as the puzzle mat that we used to have to use right here. It's a similar system. And so in Maya, other apps you have to add the Redshift object properties, but in Maya, any object you select, if you go into the actual attribute editor, you'll notice the Redshift attributes. Oops, wrong one. Right here, where you would go for the tessellation, displacement, all that stuff. you also have object ID. And so right now everything in the scene is 0, so none of them have any object ID assigned. So let's just say we want the wall to be 1, the ground to be 2, and let's make these boxes on the wall. Let's make these all 1 also. 1, 1, 1, and 1. And so right now, these objects all share the same object ID number, and the ground is its own. So if we were to render this now, let's save and hit render. And we come up here to our list of AOVs. Now we'll have our Redshift Object ID AOV. So if we click this, you'll notice that our wall is its own AOV, its own cutout, its own color. The car is its own, and the ground is its own. And if we zoom in, the rocks actually are part of the car, the 0. So if we zoom in here, there's probably some rocks down there that are the car color, which is object ID 0, but they're pretty subtle. You probably can't see them that well. And then right here, where we had our boxes, they're now, because they're assigned object ID 1, they're part of the wall mat. So this lets you selectively choose groups like of matted objects. So another thing you could do is you can actually make a Redshift object ID node. So if we go up to the Redshift options and you have object properties, here you'll have an object ID node for selection. So let's say we want the tires to be their own object ID group. Go up here, go to object properties, and click object ID node for selection. And what that does is now in our outliner we have this Redshift object ID. And so here you can assign a number. I don't know why it's gray like this, so it makes it a little hard to see, but right now it's set at 0. So let's set this to 3. And so now if we render again, and let's save, and we actually, if we click on the little plus icon on the object ID node, you'll notice that our tire front and back were added to this group. And so if we render, we should see the tires now separate once it starts rendering. Yeah, see? So now the tires are in their own separate group. So now we have the wall sharing the box and stuff object ID number, the ground using its own object ID number, the tires using object ID number 3, and everything else is 0, so it's its own color. This blue, this different darker blue. And so as you can see, now the tires are their own object ID. Cool. And what's neat is you could add or remove objects from this list just by middle mouse dragging in or out. So let's say we want this rim. So if we go to rims, you'll notice that this object is the rim. So if we drag, middle mouse click and drag this out and add it to our Redshift object ID, now it's part of the group. So if I render this again, and let's save, you'll notice now the rim is also part of object ID number 3. So that lets you easily add or remove objects by just creating a Redshift Object ID node and then just add or remove them as needed. So that makes it easy to selectively create mats for objects that you want rather than getting everything. Cool. So let's now move on to the last Cryptomatte type. So let's make another Cryptomatte. And this Cryptomatte is called user attribute. So let's give it an appropriate name. User attribute. And so how this Cryptomatte works is by adding custom attributes to objects. So for this, the name we apply here is the attribute name that we need to use on the objects. So for our example, we'll just call this let's just say Matt underscore 01 or something. And so, and that's actually lowercase it, because case, the way you write everything has to be exactly the same. So cool. So now we've got Matt01. So what you could do is now create attributes that will be referenced by this, by Matt01. So what this does is it scans your scene, and any objects that have Matt01 as an extra attribute added to it, a custom attribute, it will read it in and make its own mat in the Cryptomatte. So for our example, we're going to include the body of the car. So if let's close this. Now that we're on the object, so you can see the transform node, and there's these extra attributes. Right now it's empty because we haven't added anything. So if we go up to attributes and we click add attributes, and we go up here, for the name, we need to use the exact same name that we used in our Cryptomatte settings. And the type of attribute we need is a string. And so once you have that done and you click OK or add, we'll have Matt ID 01 and this empty space. So this empty space lets you name the mat whatever you want. So we're going to just call this body because it's the car body. And so let's also add it to the rest of the car. So now we'll come back up here, add an attribute, we'll paste it in, we'll select string, click OK. Now it's on the added list. We'll say this is body also, so that these two will share the same mat. Let's select the hood, do the same thing, add attribute, paste in our attribute name, string, we'll call this body. Cool. Now let's say we want the tires on their own. We want them to be a separate mat, but part of the same AOV Cryptomatte. So let's hit add attribute. We'll paste this in, hit OK, but this time we'll call this tire 1. And let's make the back tire its own mat also. So we'll click up here, we'll paste our attribute, string, and we'll call this tire 2. And so what this lets you do is customize which objects and the naming convention that those objects will have. So let's save this. Let's render. And if we now click on our AOVs, you'll notice we have Cryptomatte user attributes. We'll click that. And so now you'll notice that everything that wasn't part of our attributes is this darker blue. The body, which is what we chose to share, the hood, the sides are one color, and the tires, tire 1 is one color, and then tire 2 is another color. And so this lets you control which objects share a mat or which objects have their own unique mat, and you can name them any way you want. And so this is useful when you have tons of assets and attributes and you need to assemble them based on their naming convention in Nuke. So, cool. We've now created our node name based Cryptomatte, our material based, our Redshift object ID based, and our user attribute based. And so now that we've rendered this, wherever your scene setup is, that's where all your AOVs are getting rendered. Your separate custom Cryptomattes are being rendered to. So it depends on your scene, how you have your render scene setup. And that's where they'll go. So let's save this, and let's go head over to Nuke. And I'll show you how to load these in and what you can do with them. So let's pause the video for a second. Okay, now we've got Nuke loaded up, and we're starting just on a blank slate. And so what we need to do is we got to go grab all our frames that we've rendered. So we'll just select all these, drag and drop them in. Let's move that out of the way. And so right now we've got all our Cryptomattes and our beauty. So one's material name. This one's node name. Let's do them in the order that we rendered them in. And this one's Redshift object ID. And this one's user attribute. And so they look blank right now. And the reason is because these EXRs, this is why you can't just open them in Photoshop. They have special data in them that only the plugin for Cryptomatte can actually read. So once you guys have it installed, I'm only going to show you guys how to use it in Nuke, but you know, there's videos out there so you know how to use it in Fusion or After Effects or whatever. You'll have this little Cryptomatte plugin on the side, and so you could just select Cryptomatte and it'll add a Cryptomatte node to the currently selected object. We obviously don't want it on the beauty, so let's delete that. And we want it on the Cryptomatte objects. So we'll just do that. We'll copy it, paste it 4 times. Let's wire it up here. Let's unhook that. Hook that up. Hook that up. And so if we now start selecting these, boom, we'll have our mats as expected. And so let's actually, just so you guys can see everything. This is a node name. Every unique object with a unique name. Obviously, it looks like everything is separated. This is material name. This is Redshift object ID. And this is user attribute. And so now that we've got that set up this way, your Cryptomatte options here, they give you a couple options. You could preview it with color, edges, none. The way you select it, the output of your mat, usually I'll use alpha. The mat list, so the objects that you've got selected. So when you click pick or add, this is the it lets you pick the mats. So if you hold control, oops, what's going on here? Oh, okay, I see what's wrong. This is Cryptomatte 1, and we're not actually highlighting Cryptomatte 1. We need 2. So let's actually close this. Okay. Let's now click on the picker mode. So if you hold control and you click something, see, you could add stuff to the mat. So if I check the alpha right now by hitting A, you'll notice that we cut out the stuff we just selected. So we could switch back to pick or remove, hold control, and bring back the ground. And so if I hit A again, we'll go back to the sRGB color mode. So that lets you really easily add or remove objects. So I could click this, 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 and this, and hit A, and now we've got a clean mat cut out. Cool. Now this also applies to anything. So if we let's just go to this one now, and let's adjust mat 3. Let's get this out of the way. So let's say we wanted to tweak the I don't know, the color of the metal. Oh, and the reason why it looks really different for my render is because this is an EXR, so I didn't actually save the post effects, the tone mapping and all that into it. I go over that in the per light AOVs tutorial on how to match them and stuff, but we're not here to talk about that. We're just talking about the Cryptomatte stuff. And so let's just add a grade node. So we've got our grade node here, and we want to grade the image, but we don't want to affect everything, you know. So the way to do that, let's go back to our Cryptomatte, is let's say we want to only affect the car, the chrome or the silver part of the car. So let's click on color pick or add. Let's pick that. And so it's got all the silver materials selected. So if we hit A, we've got a nice mat going. And so this is going to create an alpha mat. And so we've got this mat now, and we want to just grade the silver. What we could do is, since this is generating a mat output alpha, we plug in this, or I should say our mask, into this. And so now what's happening is that our alpha from here is being moved to here, and so using a mask. And so now we're able to adjust just that part of the car. So we can, you know, darken it or something. Could adjust the hue. And so on. So think of all the endless possibilities this basically opens up. So using Cryptomatte plus the per light AOVs that I mentioned in the last tutorial, with those two things, you have just tons of control and power in how you can adjust the overall look of your renders in the compositing stage. So this is really powerful. This has been requested by a lot of people for a long time, just because it truly opens up doors to just how you can tweak the final look of your renders. And this opens up doors for handing it off to compositors who could just have a field day with all these mats, all these options, and all this control. And so let's just throw in another grade node, for example. And let's now tweak. Let's just tweak our tire, or no. Let's tweak our rims only. And so let's actually clear everything. Let's use our color picker and holding control. Let's click on this rim. Or actually, no, let's clear it. Oh yeah, and just so you know, the matte list, this lists all the objects. See how they're named? These are named the same way as they were in Maya. So if we were to go actually to our, let's go to our user attributes version, and we were to click on this body right here of the car, you'll notice that the name, oops, let's close this one, wrong, Cryptomatte 1, and let's just clear it, and let's use the color picker. You'll notice now that the name is the same as our custom attribute we created. It's body. So that's why this user attribute mode is really powerful for people, especially in studios, that need specific naming conventions rather than whatever it's called in Maya and stuff like that, or the material name. This lets you fully customize what gets matted and the name. So that's why this is really powerful to have. But anyways, let's clear it. And let's actually switch over. Let's switch over to this. So let's clear that out. So let's clear everything, and let's select just the rims. So going to our picker, holding control. We've got our 2 rims selected now. So if I hit A, you'll notice the 2 rims are matted out. And this is actually what we're going to use as a mask now. And so let's go back to our beauty. And so now we've got this second grade, and we could tweak our rims. So again, let's just switch over to a multiply. As you can see, we can make them whatever color we want. You know, whatever. the power is all there on whatever you need. And so this just lets you truly adjust your renders any way you can imagine. And so cool. Hopefully this kind of explains to you guys how Cryptomatte works, all the different types of Cryptomattes that Redshift has, all the options, how to use them, in Nuke. The same principles will apply to After Effects or Fusion. And like I said, download the plugin from the PsyOp GitHub page. That's where you can download it and install it. The instructions are all there. If you can't find the GitHub page, the link, it's in the Redshift documentation, so you guys can go there too. And all this information is in the documentation, except it's written out. So if you kind of get confused, you could either rewatch the tutorial or go to the documentation page and read it and follow the steps. So yeah, hope you guys learned something new. Take advantage of this great new feature. Super powerful stuff. Lets you really take control of your renders. Thanks again for everybody that supports my Patreon. I look forward to making more cool in-depth Patreon tutorials. This one's a good freebie since everybody should learn how to use Cryptomatte and take advantage of it. This is one of the great things that makes Redshift super powerful, up there with the CPU engines, since this is really new to the GPU game. Thanks again, and hope you guys enjoy the tutorial. Thanks. Bye.